Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is January 10th, 2025. Making a quick video, whiteboard video, talk a little bit about wallets. I'll make a far more extensive video in a bit, but I'm trying new modalities of explanation. And you guys know I do the whiteboards. And so now what I'm starting to do is write some pretty complicated HTML and CSS code to do a kind of a low tech presentation. And I'll show you guys what I've put together. So let me go ahead and present, share my screen. So what I want to talk about is the Cardano wallet architecture and look at this kind of an ecosystem wide view. And what I'm going to do is eventually create a website specifically for my presentations. And as I do these presentations, upload it to it so you guys can just pull the HTML file. But I made this a bit interactive and I thought about breaking it down into kind of different logical layers of the system. So the user interface layer, the wallet logic layer, the network layer, the data storage layer, security and cryptography, indexing, and additional services. And where I made it interactive is down here, you can kind of just click and it gives you a bunch of different text. So, for example, the user interface layer of a wallet, why it exists, the Cardano network and cryptographic protocols are complex under the hood. The UI simplifies this complexity, focusing on core user needs, viewing balance, and sending Ether token staking in an accessible manner by abstracting away lower level logic. Users can confidently operate wallets without needing to be blockchain experts. This layer also fosters user trust through clear design patterns and consistent messaging. And how we test it, and then some key examples of various different wallets. So you have Nami and Daedalus and Lace and Typhon and Eternal. And then you have your wallet logic layer, your network layer, your data storage layer, your security and cryptography layer, your indexing, and then finally some additional services that can be connected into the wallet. So I'll go into far more detail when I clean all of this up and put it together. And I'm also been working on a better diagram. And what I'd like to show, and I'll kind of foreshadow this in this video, is a little bit about alternative clients, because this is something that people talk a lot about. And, we have a Glow client that Blink Labs is working on, and they're all in various states of maturity. Okay. Then TX Pipe is working on a Rust client. Then Harmonic is working on a TypeScript. And then obviously there's the reference Haskell node. So basically, the reference Haskell full node that connects over IPC to the Cardano wallet layer. And then that will talk to your wallet UI. It's kind of your architecture that you're looking at. And this is conventional, so you can think of it in terms of REST or JSON RPC, GraphQL. There's are all kinds of different ways that you can imagine a person connecting your wallet UI to the Cardano wallet. And then this uses these Ouroboros mini protocols that we're famous for. And that's kind of exotic. People love them or hate them, but those type channels are kind of a mainstay of things. All these other guys have different approaches, and they kind of cover different parts of the stack. And Seba, actually from DC Spark, even made a great video about the different ways you can think of these nodes. But the point is that we really want to get to what the Ethereum ecosystem has done. And if you look here, where the Ethereum test, common tests for all Ethereum implementations, and you scroll down, they actually have a test suite that they've developed. And look at all these different implementations of the Ethereum virtual machine, the full client. So there's Mantis, which is what we created in Scala years ago during the old Ethereum Classic days. So technically, I was an Ethereum core developer because we actually got it working with the Ethereum network, Besu, Mana, Go, Parity, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, these tests create a surface where, regardless of what backend you happen to be using, you're able to ensure that the client works as intended. So, where we want to go is we want to have kind of a Cardano test suite plus blueprints. And those blueprints are the formal specs, which are incomplete right now. And the idea is that some combination of these allow you to validate your full client. So, where we would like to go is that no matter what your experience happens to be, if your user wants to run a full node, instead of just downloading Daedalus, what they would do is they'd pick their wallet they like Vesper, Lace, Eternal, et cetera. And then what ideally they would do is they would choose backend, and it can be remote. And then you connect to the backend of the particular wallet provider, and that could run on Blockfrost or, whatever, Maestro, et cetera. Or it could be self hosted. And if it's self hosted, then the idea is that you would have a menu of options, the Haskell node, the Go node, and all those options would be basically certified against a standard. Okay. And that standard is up here. So it says validate your full client. All right. And it'll be certified against that test suite. So what we've done is I met with the TX Pipe guys representing Pragma, and we discussed about a working group between Intersect and Pragma. And the idea is that the working group would have a discussion about what a test suite could entail. And anybody who's building a full node, so any of these guys, Blink Labs and Harmonic, they're welcome to participate. And basically, the idea is that we can get to a point where we have a certification concept, and then people can self-certify against that standard like we did. And, Ethereum ecosystem doesn't exactly like us, but they still were gracious enough because we certified against their standard to include us actually there, Mantis, which is pretty cool. So, analogously, you'd have a self certification standard. And then when a person installs the wallet, they can kind of choose their own adventure and they can say, okay, do we want to run on a remote backend, or do we want a full self hosted full node? And if that's the case, what flavor do you want? So, you'll basically have your menu and you can kind of pick, and then it would download the option accordingly. Now, the goal of these, we have to improve a few things. So there's also a parallel work stream, which is this concept of Mithril fast think. And then there is also this concept of network contribution. And network contribution currently exists on the peer to peer side. So you relay transactions plus blocks, but you're not doing the validation. Okay, so you're kind of setting these things down, and there's a whole specification of how that works. But there can be more sophisticated things that people contribute. So these are kind of like the full clients of Cardano. But then also you have this concept of a supernode where you go beyond Cardano and you actually run the infrastructure of Cardano plus the partner chains network and potentially other layer ones as well. And then there's also an idea of providing service modules. And those service modules mean like a Hydra node, a proof server, providing a trusted execution environment, et cetera, et cetera. And let me show you a little something that's cool that's kind of on the horizon. It's kind of growing. So let me hide my screen quick while I find this, and I will bring it up for you guys. So NVIDIA released something really nifty, and Iagon has something really cool as well. And I want to show you what both these guys got. Okay. So first off, where is the future of this computing going? Guess I didn't stop sharing that, did I? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm tired. All right. So we have Project Digits, and this is basically a supercomputer in a very tiny box. And you can actually stack these, but this has a massive amount of memory, 128 gigabytes of memory. It can run models up to 200 billion parameters. It has the new NVIDIA GB10 Grace Blackwell super chip. You have 4 terabytes of storage and a petaflop of compute power. Why? And it's only about $3,000. Now, why that's relevant is that it turns out those super chips for AI are super, super, super good at doing zero knowledge proofs as well if we optimize the code. So when we think about Midnight, Midnight is going to provide a proof layer inside the system, and we're building that out. So there's a world where people buy these little boxes. At the same time, you can use that box to actually host a full node. And then what the goal would be is when you install your wallet, you actually can just install this on some hardware, and then you can connect your cell phone app or your desktop application to that backend remotely or on the same system. As long as you leave it running, you basically can use it in your completely trustless environment because you're self-hosted. Now, the other one is Iagon. I always talk about the home team, and these guys are more of a data storage node. But when you take a look at the details here, for 1,600 bucks, you're getting a Ryzen 7, 8 core, 64 gigs of RAM, and 36 terabytes of storage. So you also could be running basically an Iagon node, but you also can use this as your full wallet node. So the reason why I want to get there is that I'd like to get to a point where people in the Cardano ecosystem are stop the sharing. There we go. People in the Cardano ecosystem are uh, hosting their own infrastructure. When you think about the resilience of a network, the quantity of full nodes around is a really big component of it. And so far, the only way to do that is Daedalus, and we're kind of moving beyond the age of Daedalus. What's likely going to happen to Daedalus over the next 6 to 9 months is Daedalus will be deprecated from the IO perspective. It will be transferred over to a community-led open source project. There's several people that have been interested in kind of taking that over. And then what we're going to do is work on the lace side of building kind of an open standard for how one would connect a node to wallets, and then try to work with Vesper, Eternal, and Giro, and all these other people that are in Cardano ecosystem, and see if we can get them to extend as well. And my dream is to make it really simple for a person to download a full Mithril node, run it in their system tray. It's just there, kind of like BitTorrent. And at the very least, it provides network resources. And then over time, make it easy for people to put in modules, extensions to their full node to help with indexing or running Hydra or whatever they so choose. So this is going to be one of the big roadmap items of LACE in 2025, but we're taking an ecosystem-wide standards-driven approach. And that ecosystem approach is basically going to mean that once we solve it there, we solve it for everybody, and it creates a practical path to get us to a multi-node world. We want the user to be in charge of what backend they want to run and what hardware do they want to run that backend and what services do they want that hardware to provide. That digits device I showed you is a low cost way, relatively speaking, of having a proof super server that can do tons of zero knowledge operations like recursive snarks and et cetera, if they're so optimized. Well, the Iagon would be an example of a data super server that can store a lot of information and be used to create kind of a decentralized storage layer inside the system. And there are other things that could be optimized for high bandwidth applications or optimized for running Hydra heads and spinning lots of those things up. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. But the idea is if we make it simple, it just basically becomes part of your stack and you stop using remote services, but you're actually self-hosting and you're actually completely in control of your entire world. So it's going to take some time for the ecosystem to kind of go about this because we've lived in a monolithic culture for a while. But I do believe there's definitely going to be a path to do it. And now that we have Intersect and Pragma in this working group, that's one of the things that can be discussed between those two sides. And then when we talk about the budget process, when alternative nodes get funding, part of that funding can be funding for certification against a standard because everybody in the Cardano ecosystem, they all have become accustomed to formal methods and peer review and high quality, high assurance software. We should never lose that. But we have to understand that that's not free. And so it's important that when alternative nodes are constructed, there's a path to ensure that they have an equivalent level of quality over what the Haskell node has been providing for people. And then basically the user gets to decide which one makes more sense because some of them will have different features. Some may work really well for certain modules you want to plug in, and some may be much faster and sync faster. Some might work better in the browser, for example, a TypeScript node. There's a lot more stuff you can pull into the browser environment than you could with the Haskell side, for example. But you don't want to divorce yourself from that. You want the user to be basically in the driver's seat, and then the goal is then to also enable eventually the capacity to run a super node with that. So it's going to take a while for during this year for all these things to percolate, but Lace will have a desktop mode, and that desktop mode will be a superior experience to the desktop mode for a full node that Daedalus has. Just to give you some hard numbers, when we tested a Mithril node, the benchmarks we're getting is a full sync in under an hour, whereas Daedalus takes about 3 days, give or take. Same security level, relatively speaking. So it's an amazing improvement, but that Mithril standard kind of has to be dragged into the full node world. And then those interfaces have to be discussed. And then there's a lot of discussion about the standardization of cryptography and standardization of how interfaces plug in and inter wallet interoperability. So joining DREC was one component because we got to then talk to wallet makers and other ecosystems. And now we get to do the same within the entire Cardano ecosystem. And those conversations are ongoing and fruitful, and there's a lot to do. And then it's nice because we massively improve the user experience for everybody. We preserve the same level of security, and now we get a lot more decentralization and resilience. My hope is that tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of full nodes will be installed under this, and people just kind of run them in the backdrop and they don't even think about it. And it massively improves the resilience of the system. And if we have the appropriate test suites, things like the hard fork combinator will still work. The security levels will be relatively equivalent and we'll have a lot of standards that basically people use. And so these teams can run, and it overall will be a much more vibrant ecosystem. Furthermore, by allowing specialized hardware to come in, people can then start building customized nodes with modules on them that enable pub sub, customized modules that enable Hydra, that enable proof servers and other such things. Because when we look at the data diffusion layer of Cardano, there's a lot going on there that's above and beyond what just the protocols have. And typically, this is being handled in kind of a fragmented and ad hoc way and has to be cleaned up quite a bit. So, this is the first of probably a series of videos. And as I mentioned, I cleaned up the presentation a little bit, and I'm trying new ways to explain things to people than just handwriting it. So I thought it was really cool to introduce that nifty little animation that I came in with. And the Lace team is also going to get a little bit more vocal about these things, especially Brandon Wolf. He's a great leader, and that team is quickly building up. In addition to a desktop mode, we will also do a mobile mode as well. In fact, we're going to set up a dedicated team in Argentina to create the mobile clients for Lace. So we'll have an Android and iOS client. Takes some time to get there, but it is on the roadmap for 2025. And we had to figure out the right format, function, and team, and centralizing all of them in one location and getting them really incentivized to produce is something we care a lot about. The App Store is still on the roadmap. There's a lot of cool stuff that's there. It was in development hell for 2 years, and we've managed to pull it out. Lace has been one of the most frustrating projects because we had a huge and beautiful roadmap, and it just got gummed up for a large variety of reasons. We got past that, and now we're moving really quickly, and it's really exciting to see what we can do. And what's nice is we're not just moving as one entity, we're thinking about an ecosystem-wide approach about how do these wallets live in a broader ecosystem. Lace is always going to live in the browser because that's where your money is, your transactions are, your information is, that's where your lived experience is, and it needs to live on the cell phone as well. And just because it lives in the browser doesn't mean it should have substandard experience or security. It should be a first-class citizen as a desktop application. By allowing you to connect to remotely a full node and be able to process using that as your backend, that's a very powerful step forward. An integration of identity into this is also another powerful step forward. So it's a project, and it makes absolutely no sense to just solve it for Lace. It makes sense to create standards across the ecosystem so that the other wallet providers can benefit from that. And they don't really have to spend a lot of money or effort, and then suddenly they can offer their user base a self-host opportunity. Because if you're already a user of Vesper, Euro, or Eternal, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, well, you have to now migrate to get better security or something. You should have the ability to do that because our goal is to make sure everybody is using the experiences that they like. In fact, we saw that with Nami. We bought Nami and we kept the Nami UX and we migrated people over into Lace, and Lace will always have a Nami mode. We actually didn't copy any code. We had to completely rebuild Nami and put it within Lace inside that secure interface because the original code of Nami was very beta and it needed to be cleaned up. So that migration is ongoing, and a lot of people are moving over, not even realizing that actually they're moving over to a totally different infrastructure, a different back end and a different front end, even though it has the exact same user experience. So lot to do, but the rubber's hitting the road. And once you have this paradigm, you also have a lot of exciting new things. For example, you can have wallet scripts. Wallet scripts enable you to run almost like a shell script or a bash script against a wallet. So you can chain a bunch of commands together. So you think of an advanced user mode. Imagine if you're a company doing payroll, you can have a payroll script, you run it, it can do hundreds of transactions at the same time, just like any type of command line process automation. So, and you can even create templates and libraries of wallet scripts to manage things, and also shared wallets, shared ownership of wallets, having multi-sig, super important, super powerful. And hardware-enabled multi-sig is the most secure way of using a cryptocurrency in the entire industry. It is ridiculously difficult if you mix multiple hardware wallets together in a 3 of 5 or 5 of 7 multi-sig to compromise that wallet. In fact, I don't think it's ever been done in the history of the cryptocurrency space without social engineering. It's ridiculously difficult. And the user experience is rather straightforward, especially if you live in a world of PubSub. And there's a lot of SIPs that are coming to improve that. So there's going to be a wave of SIPs that come from this effort, a wave of standardization that comes from this effort. But it's definitely something we're thinking a lot about. And now is the time to really improve the usability. And that final component, that App Store component of it, it's a pivotal component of the Bitcoin DeFi experience. And it's something that's going to be a massive competitive differentiator. So it's an emergent theme of all of these things. So been in the office since like 7 a.m. and just about go home, but I figured I'd make this video real quickly to end out the day. I ended up spending way too much time doing CSS and HTML and going back to my youth with fucking around with that image. But it's pretty cool though. It's amazing what you can do these days. Take a look at this one more time. I'm kind of proud of it. Where did I put it? Yeah, here we go. Cardano wallet architecture. Look at that. Got that spinning effect. These things directly scanning the entire blockchain is computationally intensive. By indexing relevant data like UTXO, stake pools, and tokens, wallets can instantly retrieve transaction history and some examples. The different things that we have to worry about on the Q&A. It's not rendering bold correctly. See, that's the markdown for bolding it. Oh, well. Anyway, you can see that I'm still a nerd at heart. Um, good good times ahead. We're making so much progress as an ecosystem. Hydra is looking great. The Laos is being prototyped at bleeding neck speeds. A lot of big improvements with the node, and just things are coming together. And that whole paradigm of extended UTXO-based development, we're really starting to understand what that means as an ecosystem, and we're getting down to the nuts and bolts of how to do that well. And these second, third generation dApps that are coming online are so much better than the first generation that we saw in 2021. So I'm really proud of the ecosystem. We just got to massively improve the user experience for the wallet because mass adoption's coming, and we need to get it to a point where everything is just super simple and beautiful. And also, we preserve and protect the things that are important to us. I know the community wants a multi node world, and this is how you get there in practice in a non adversarial way. The user installs their wallet, they get a menu, and they can click the logo of the backend that they want when they want to self host. It downloads it, installs it, and boom, it's just working out of the hood. And then you have adoption of that. And then basically they have different feature sets that are established with that. So various different nodes are going to probably end up being specialized for different things. And that's where the competition is going to come from. And the hope would be then a diverse ecosystem of 3 to 4 full nodes that people regularly use, and probably an enterprise super node that's used by the big actors like exchanges and other such people. Standards and a lot more conversation on interfaces has to happen. And there's a very unorthodox way of doing things in the Cardano world because of the many protocols and how we do IPC for node communication to the Cardano wallet layer. And some people disagree with that. They like their JSON RPC. And so there's compromises to be made along the way, and we'll kind of see how that all plays out. For my part, uh, you know, uh, I'm gonna have a remote node and a cell phone app at some point with Lace on it that's multi-sig, and I relay transactions through my self-hosted node like I would a VPN, and I just SSH into it and send the stuff there. Nobody even knows I'm using it, and it's there on the phone. And we'll even explore how to do that as a progressive web app. So potentially we can get around the app store, but there's plenty of ways to think about it. So we're exploring that strategy right now, and we're trying to get into that rapid prototyping of every 2 to 4 weeks having a release schedule. Lace has been on, roughly speaking, a release schedule like that, with a little bit of a break for the holidays. And we'd like to every 3 to 6 weeks for the browser-based push forward. The node side is going to take a little bit more time. We're still kind of figuring out how we want to do a few things because it's not a good idea to pair that with DB Sync. It takes too much memory, and there's a lot of work to get alternative options with this. So it's a big series of discussions, but it's one of those things that fits really nicely in a 6 to 9 month bread box as a pile of work, especially if you're thinking cross wallet. So as we get through the next few months, we'll see how that materializes. But it's a big pillar of the roadmap alongside the partner chains component, the Laos component, the Bitcoin DeFi component, and a lot of Plutus under the hood improvements. Also, with Bitcoin DeFi, UPLC compilation to RISC-V is a high priority, and we're exploring it right now so that Aiken can compile to both Bitcoin script as well as Plutus and run on Cardano and Bitcoin. It's a big part of that paradigm, alongside multi-chain signatures and trusted execution environment support. So, just give you guys a heads up on all that. Thank you for listening. 11,000 people live, not too bad, huh? And I'm glad that everybody had a chance to enjoy the new year and get back to work. I'm gonna go get some sleep. Cheers.